Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of Duck Review. Now today we're going to just go through a few of my favourite types of duck and review them out of 10. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here we have the classic mallard, probably the most common duck you'll see in rural United Kingdom. Now as you can see here, we have the subtle kind of colouring, the blue on the side of the wing that kind of goes up to violet. Personally, I really like this. I think it's quite discreet. Obviously when the mallard is stationary or swimming, you don't really see that, and I think it's a really nice treat if you can catch one flying and you can see that. Along with this, I think the male mallard, as you can see here, the neck and head is green and it's almost garish, and I quite like that about it as well. As well as the disconnect from the body, as you can kind of see here, with the this being a particularly prominent male with a kind of strong band of white disconnecting his body and his head. I think that is fantastic. Now as we move on to the female mallard, again, same colouring of the underside of the wing. Again, very discreet. You don't generally see that when they're swimming or stationary. And with the females, yes, they are slightly more plain. They're still very distinctive looking birds, and yeah, I'd say the mallard, iconic, very nicely coloured. Slightly garish, not necessarily the best for survival, this kind of head and this kind of beak, but I would have to give it a solid 7.6 out of 10, I'd say. Very nice bird. Also, just another thing, the wing shape, I think on most birds is exquisite. Or on these birds specifically, if you just look at the slight rippling of the wings, and also the colouring, it's something I'm a big fan of the mallard. And I'd say it's definitely up there within the top 3 best ducks that I will be reviewing today, in terms of wingspan and also just looks in general. Right, let's move on to the next one. Now up next we have the Muscovy duck. Now this is a more commonly seen duck in the United States and Southern America. Again, it's not one of my favourites, I'm going to be honest. Not only do I not particularly like the slight ringlet over there, above the beak, but also, maybe this is just this specific case, and we'll just use that as an argument because it's not. Most of them do look like this, apart from the domesticated ones, which, gotta say, are very cute looking. But they're generally not too effective at surviving. Very aggressive animals that, in my experience, are quite vicious. Now, ducks on the whole are quite strangely vicious, actually. We had some a few years ago. And they'd primarily, try and rip each other, and when they weren't doing that, they'd be, doing other horrible things. So, fun animals, but the Muscovy in particular, not a particularly great looking bird. I mean, I will say the feathering on top here is incredibly waterproof, as you'd expect, but also it's a very nice pattern on it. Just zoom in a little bit more. You can see the slightly kind of, I guess, tealy green shadowing on them, which is rather lovely, I think. Also the tail there, I like the kind of sort of fade into brownness, but on the whole, they don't pop anywhere near as much as the mallard. Their faces are that of a Russian politician from the 90s, and quite frankly, I do not like them. I'm going to give them a 4.1 out of 10. Not a good duck. Not a good duck. And up next we have another hood classic, the Madagascar teal duck. Now I'm a big fan. Now initially you may look at this duck and think, what is this doing? You know, Madagascar, the only animals I want to see from Madagascar are the funny penguins. But this bird for me trumps them. Not only is the patterning on this fantastic, I mean it's almost leopard print, but also then the subtle fade into black and white just on the undersky here. And this isn't just in this one specifically. This happens in many of the birds with slight kind of, I guess, what's the word? Defects, if you will. Except defects are a harsh word. But slight variation upon the patterns here. But I think this one is fantastic. The Madagascar teal. Again here with the falling down. The intricacy of the feathers on this bird, it's exquisite. And if I was to compare it to the previous one, the other one a little bit messy, a little bit rugged looking. I think this is almost in many ways similar to the female mallard, but it does everything the female mallard does, but better. Also, it's just absolutely adorable. And not to mention the fact that Madagascar has some very harsh environments to be surviving in. This little thing may not look like much, but it survives more than your average British or American duck, I'll tell you that much, which gives it brownie points. For me, this is probably a 7.6 out of 10. Very respectable score. Easily in my top 3. Alright, let's move on. Up next, we have the Ike sponsor, the national bird of Mississippi. Sorry, the state bird of Mississippi, I believe. And this is a wood duck. Now, personally, I think these ducks look a little bit silly, so I'm sorry if you're from Mississippi and you're watching this. But again, very interesting looking bird. I really like the colour scheme on it, but I think this mohawk does deserve to go back to the 70s, to be honest. It's not too great, you know. Maybe with Johnny Rotten and what have you, there would be a look, but no, I don't think so anymore. The female, very plain, not a particularly nice bird to look at, to be honest. And yeah, nothing really screams out about it. What I will say is if I was on a walk and I saw this in Mississippi or anywhere in America really where they're relatively common, I'd probably give it a second glance and probably even give it a look, but that's more because how silly it looks rather than how, you know, how fantastic it is. This is definitely one of the more peculiar ducks on God's green earth, but yeah, I'm not a fan at all, to be honest, and you know, this isn't terrible, but it's also not great. I'll probably give it a 5.4. Yeah, again, sorry if you're from Mississippi, and you know, sorry if you're a fan of the Ike sponsor, but no for the wood duck. And we move on now to its distant cousin, or, well, relatively close cousin actually, the mandarin duck. This is fantastic. See, almost all the complaints I had about the previous wood duck, the Ike sponsor, is actually completely reversed here. I think this thing looks fabulous. Now, the female, again, relatively plain, but I generally prefer this. This looks very nice, you know. The, you zoom in here, just the, I say print, but the feathers here, absolutely fabulous. And again, like many ducks, they do have the waterproof underside, which looks very nice actually when exposed. Fantastic. And, well, in captivity, but that's okay. I think this is part of a wildlife trust, so we'll move on for now. But this fella, look at him. Absolutely strutting his stuff. Absolutely fabulous popping. It's like a phoenix, honestly. And then the just slightly coloured kind of pauldron, if you will, around the neck. Superb. The colouring on this man is flamboyant. It's absolutely superb, which is why it's in the top 5. And I would say this duck is a solid 7.3. Absolutely superb. Not quite the mallard, you know, not quite the Madagascar teal. I'll tell you what, this feather in terms of looks is right at the very top. Right at the very top. This is the Histrionicus histrionicus, the harlequin duck. Now, this fat piece of lump is, well, it's been a scourge on my garden for months. These guys have been flying over at night and shitting on my garden for whoever knows how long. Now, are they much to look at? No, to be honest. And in terms of British bird life, they're really not that great. But, you know, they're still very nice. I got to appreciate this is just on this one specifically. With this nice little kind of ginger streak. It's charming almost. And yes, there is, most of them do have like this little ginger streaks here and there, but it's nice. What I will say though is the bird is very plain, and bar the ginger, it's very, it's almost a pigeon actually, which is, well, didn't mean that to be insulting, but I suppose it is almost. It's a flying rat with ginger, so in some ways worse. Apologies to my ginger viewers if there are any. But yeah, this is a mediocre bird, and I'd say actually it is exactly mediocre. 4.7 out of 10. And this, ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, is the King Ida. a lord and saviour. This bird is probably the best duck of all time. Not this one specifically, just the species. Now, I'm sorry if this gets a bit pixelated, but you'll have to bear with. So it's almost got Christ, I'm forgetting the terminology. Well, yeah, the upper bill of a toucan. The eyes, yes, admittedly beady, but these things are absolutely fabulous. Majestic creatures. Now, if you're wondering where can you find them, well, the answer to that would be across the Northern Hemisphere, Northern Europe, and generally across the north. You may even occasionally catch them in Canada and areas of Russia, if you're lucky. They of course travel the Arctic as well, so these are hard bastards, you know. What I will say is ducks like this are deceptive. You think that they're probably not going to survive, not particularly well adapted, but I tell you what, this thing's a unit. Never mess with a king eider, ever. Unless you want to lose your entire family, and your entire family's fortune. Because this thing is the goat. Or should I say, the duck. Right, some honourable mentions, here we go. This is the Eurasian widgeon. One of the few birds actually native to Iceland, says a fun fact for you. This thing, despite actually most of them not looking like this, is an absolutely beautiful bird, it's got to be said. Again, like I was praising with the first mallard, very, very nice, kind of subtle, more subtle in fact. Colouring on the wings, feathers here actually being gorgeous. Can you imagine having an arrowhead with that on the end? That'd be superb. But look at this thing. Absolutely majestic. Almost looks like a head of corn in some ways. Nice white beak. Long wingspan as well, as many ducks will have. But absolutely superb. And like I said, survives in Iceland, so you know this thing's hard. There's not many animals that survive over there. It survives in the Arctic too, and you know, quite a few ducks actually do that trip, just over the kind of the North Sea, over towards Iceland and towards Canada when they're migrating. This is one of them. Incredibly hard duck, and deserves an honourable mention. I would say this is an 8.1 out of 10. The Oxyura jamaicensis, the ruddy duck, the worst duck ever. This honourable mention, the only good thing about it is it has a blue beak, and most of them don't even have that. This sucks. It's terrible. I hate them. I want them to go extinct. They're horrendous. I just won't elaborate. Alright, see you. Good night.